Growing up, I think I engaged in the usual schoolboy pranks. I was a good student. I was always a good student. I liked to read. I liked to study. But I was never good at athletics. And I really wanted to be a basketball star. I just wanted to be a basketball star. People talk about the New York Rens, the Renaissance, and some basketball team. And I really wanted to, but I was just never good at athletics. Baseball, softball, you name it. But I made the traveling team in basketball. Now, why was that? When I was in high school. Because my buddies were on the team. And I was their friend. They wanted me to be along. So if you took 7, I was the 7th. If you took 8, I was 8th. If you took 6, I was the 6th. Never the 5th. Never the 5th. But I liked my friends. I liked sports, but I was never good at sports. But I had a great desire to read, and I wanted to be one of the boys. I didn't want to be over there alone. We were just a bookworm. And I tried to fit in, and I think that I did. Well, I remember the spitballs and the slingshots and all that, the usual antics that you would have when you were young. And so that happened to me also.
Were your friends bookworms also, or were you sort of isolated in that sense?
Some were. I often think about a young girl who was in class with me, but her folks were poor. She lived in what we call the quarters, and either she'd be number 1 on the exam, I'd be number 1. Her name was Aplis Pittman. I always remember her, and I just think what could have happened to her if she'd had the opportunity to go to college. But she had to stop. After high school, she had to stop, go to work, and she worked in a factory. And I think about that because she was a smart girl. She read a lot. And there were a couple of fellows in my class, a couple of boys who read a lot. So I was not the only one. And I was never thought of, as we often hear today, oh, you're trying to be too white, or you're trying to be too smart. That never came up. That never came up. Because very often they would come to me and say, look, help me with this or help me with that. And maybe that was the reason, but that never was an issue. That was not an issue.
And you obviously went to segregated schools growing up.
Oh, I did, yes.
What was that like, and how did you get a sense of any differences between the schools that you went to and comparable white schools?
You were always aware of it. I grew up in Quincy, Florida. I was born in Tallahassee because my father was teaching in Tallahassee at Florida A&M College. It was called FAMC then. It's called FAMU now. From 1929 to 1930. I was born May 22nd, 1930. So that's where I was born. My father then became principal of a high school in Eustis, Florida, and was there from 1930 to 32. And in 32, he was named principal of the black high school in Quincy, Florida. So I grew up in Quincy. I'm a native of Quincy, Florida. Segregated school. And you knew it was segregated. You'd have some of the old books, and you knew people who worked at the White High School as janitors or something else, carpenters. They'd see all the new books over there. They had new equipment for the science laboratory. We had barely none, all of us cracked. I was old. We didn't have a library. The one library in the city, I could not attend. But you had teachers who told you the same thing that your parents told you. You can do anything as well as anyone else can do it. And you can do it better if you put your mind to it. And believe me, we were really having our ideas reinforced by our teachers. So what your parents told you made a difference. And what your teachers told you helped to make that difference even more than you would think, because of the fact you knew they were reinforcing what your parents had already told you.
But as you said a little while ago, you told your father, I have eyes, I have ears.
Yes,
I see what the reality is around me.
Absolutely. But I wanted to do well. And I think that was part of it. Intrinsically, I wanted to do well. I wanted to be a good student. I wanted to be number 1. And very often I was number 1. Sometimes I wasn't. So maybe it was Aplis Pittman or one of the other persons who was number 1. But that just spurred you on to do more. And you thought about doing it because even though you had your ideas about things and you knew what was going on, you went downtown and you saw the white water fountains and the colored water fountains, the colored waiting rooms and the white waiting rooms. All of these you saw. But somewhere deep within, you really felt what your teachers had told you and what your father and mother had told you, really maybe there was something there. You said, I really want to do well. And you did it, knowing full well that it was definitely, the society was definitely separate and unequal, not unequal.
And so as a little boy growing up, did you see clear limits to the kinds of dreams that you had as to what you were going to do with your life? That it was going to be circumscribed by the segregated society that you were in?
I thought that it probably would be, but maybe it wouldn't, because my parents had told me so often and my teachers had told me so often that you could do it. And these people were older. They're supposed to know what's going on and to know better. Maybe there's something to it, but I still had my doubts about it. I still had my doubts.